Hello everyone, and welcome back to the RimWorld Rags to Riches series. My friends, once again, as always, I'm ever so glad to see you back here with me today, where we're beginning by cleaning up the absolute mess that was left behind with the raid from last episode where we slaughtered a bunch of filthy outlanders. However, I quickly began getting bored of mopping up blood out of the streets, and I decided to work on something a bit more fun. I actually began putting in many different types of planters in our streets and sidewalks. That way we have some vegetation. I'm afraid the city's becoming something of a concrete jungle, and I really just want to make things look better. And I have to say, I was pretty happy with how they turned out. Most of these are just some small planter areas throughout our sidewalks behind the rentable rooms and everything that we've been building. That way our tenants are a bit happier looking out their windows at them. I'm just hoping that these props for the trees and everything that we're making don't cause my PC to shit the bed, but I suppose we'll see. I'll continue doing this here and there when I can, adding in flowers and trees and vegetation just to make things a little bit brighter and everyone's days a bit brighter with nicer sights. After that though, I decided to send out a trade caravan to the Republic of Libertas, a city and a nearby settlement where we would end up selling them many of our luxury items: coffee, iced coffee, hot sauce, smoke leaf butter, smoke leaf joints, yada yada yada, the same old stuff that we're always selling to them, of course. Of course though, this was not only to make us plenty of silver, which we would end up doing, but this was also for us to purchase more resources such as steel, advanced components, plasteel, and components, because I do plan on utilizing those for some more projects in the future. Now naturally, as you could probably guess, I do often trade with the Republic as well as the Marshals off camera, but sometimes I just want to show you guys that way that you're aware of what's actually going on behind the scenes when I'm not always recording. Once the trading and bartering was finally completed, it was time for our caravan to begin making its way back home. In the meantime, I thought I might start working on some smaller projects around the city once more. Specifically, in this case, some more fire sprinklers. That way we can focus more on our fire prevention if one were to break out in some more of these townhouses. As you can see here with the sprinklers as well, each one requires a few components, I believe, if not maybe one or two, and thus why we need more and more resources. A few hours later though, and our caravan would finally return home with all of our brand new resources that we had been bartering for, and we would immediately begin putting them to good use as Jor would begin working on a brand new android once more, as is his specialty by this point. My friends, I introduce to you Cal, our very first Tier 2 android. As to why I decided to choose a Tier 2 android instead of a Tier 1 for this particular occupation, you could say, which I'll show you in just a moment, I feel that the Tier 2 have a better grasp on complex tasks, if you will. Instead of being a Tier 1 android for security who just fires at the enemy, Cal is going to be our very first firefighter. Firefighting can be a bit more complex than the security bot's jobs. You know, do you save the cat that's burning alive in the house, or do you save one of our tenants? Prophets will tell you that you save one of our tenants, and thus why I feel Cal is a much better fit, his make and model at least, for the firefighting position. Perhaps one of the greatest parts though is that Cal already comes with the knowledge of how to put out fires installed into his little CPU, and he also has a fire extinguisher that'll do the job right. After that, it was time for us to perform a few operations on our Outlander companions who we have imprisoned. Unfortunately, the first operation was a complete failure, but the second would be much more successful, giving us a nice fresh kidney to sell. Now this did all occur in front of some of the other prisoners, but not to worry, nobody would believe them anyhow. Shortly thereafter, I noticed that we had quite the bountiful harvest of potatoes in our field, something that we've been getting for the last few seasons, and I completely forgot that we were going to make some vodka mash out of these taters, so that's exactly what we began doing, and we would finally be able to begin actually fermenting some vodka. Distilling vodka? vodka, whatever the terminology should be there, we're going to have some delicious alcohol. While we're waiting on that process to take place though, I thought it might be a good idea to start on our very first research project of this episode, which is going to be basic replacement parts for our Tier 1 androids. Since we're essentially using them like cannon fodder in our security force, this is going to be pretty crucial to replacing their limbs and things like that, their CPUs and what have you. But also for Chris, the android that we've been sending into space to take samples of asteroids, it would be useful to give him at least one mining arm to make the process much smoother, I feel. Now then, while we're working on this new research though, I wanted to begin working on a brand new business within the city once more. This one is going to be just right next to the casino, as well as the luxury rooms of the casino that we're renting out per night, and it is indeed going to be our sauna. The long-awaited project that many of you have been suggesting and recommending for quite some time. Now, I have been assured that for saunas and pools, we can actually automatically monetize them by using the saunas through hospitality. I'm not sure if I need another mod or what, but this doesn't seem to really be the case, although maybe I just don't know what I'm doing. Either way, the sauna is now completed, and I think that it looks absolutely splendid, although a little bit bare bones. As you can see though, we have 2 saunas built in with towel racks and seating as well as lighting, and in our little reception area here we also have some seating for folks who are waiting to go in, or they can also get some water from the water cooler or perhaps a snack from the vending machine. Given that a sauna seems to be a bit of a luxurious commodity, I thought it fitting that it be around the casino and our sushi bar. That way some of our guests with some deep pockets and heavy spending tendencies can enjoy it as well. Perhaps they'll go get full on sushi and then go to the spa to get very warm and vomit up all the sushi, just before they go waste their entire wallet at the roulette table. Now, we've been focusing and catering to our more luxurious guests for quite some time, a little bit too long if you ask me, and that is why on the other side of the city by the laundromat, I'm actually going to be building a soup kitchen. More often than not, we get plenty of guests who are coming through here who actually can't afford many meals that we have because they're too expensive, and also they can't afford a room for the night even at its lowest prices. So we're going to have to do something about that in today's episode. Now, this is a business though, of course, so we are still going to be charging for meals, but at the lowest price possible. And to be honest with you, if I see someone who can't afford any food at all, we will lower it to 0 just that one time on rare occasions. Now then, on a seemingly unrelated note, we're also going to be sending out a caravan to the Confederacy of Benya to offer them some gifts in favor of goodwill. And I say seemingly because this actually ties back to our soup kitchen. But first we're going to need to make friends with them, so we would end up offering them some of our weapons, some of our sodas, smoke leaves, and things of that nature, and eventually they were actually neutral with us. Not only does this mean that they'll no longer be attacking us, but this also means that they'll be sending many a trade caravan over to our city, which is going to be quite crucial in a few days. Speaking of which, for right now, they are also the perfect buyers for some of our organs like a kidney and liver. Now, whether or not they're using these for surgeries or as some type of tribal ritual, I don't know, but they are paying. However, they were not the perfect buyer for some of our other resources like hot sauce and smoke leaf butter, unfortunately, so I suppose they'd rather just stick with pemmican. Either way though, a few days later, we ended up getting exactly what we wanted, a slave caravan from the Confederacy of Benya. As you know, Nino, as well as all of our other fine folks, find the practice of slavery absolutely abhorrent, so instead of buying slaves, we are going to be purchasing their freedom. These 2 fine folks are Caspus and Candace. The 2 of them have been formerly slaves of the Confederacy of Benya for countless years at this point. They quite literally can't remember, but they are going to be our leaders over the soup kitchen. Now, unfortunately, neither of them are all that proficient at cooking, I'll say, though Candace does have a very small passion for the work. It doesn't really matter, as the soup kitchen, the meals are going to be extremely cheap, and as long as they're not constantly food poisoning people after they get their skills up just a little bit, that's all we're worried about. Naturally, in exchange for their freedom and room and board, they were willing to work here, and we would allow them to stay here for free. Minus having to cook every day, but that's really not that big of a deal, I wouldn't think. I wanted to mention as well that I spotted Reek, the son of President Tree, the president of the Republic of Libertas, and it appears that he's staying in our lodge for the weekend. Now, we didn't bother approaching him, as I'm sure he's trying trying to enjoy some privacy on his little weekend getaway here, but I just thought it was quite interesting that that's where he chose to stay. Now then, back to the topic at hand. Right next to our soup kitchen, I thought that it would only be fair for us to build some proper housing for any homeless population, or possibly anyone who is traveling through the city on the road who doesn't have enough money to stay a night in one of our rooms. And thus, of course, we would end up building a homeless shelter. Now, this wasn't anything too spectacular. As one might imagine, it was a crude little structure with a few different rooms, approximately about 7 or so, with some sleeping bags where somebody could wait out the cold, dark night. Of course, though, anyone that would be staying here probably wouldn't be worrying about all that, though, and is more just interested in the fact that these beds are 100% free, and the fact that it's within such close proximity to the soup kitchen where they can get a free to low-cost meal. Funny enough, this is probably one of the most charitable things, if not the most charitable thing that we've ever done in this series, and I'm pretty proud of that. Now then, we move on to our second research project of the episode, which just so happens to be geothermal power. I know, we are long overdue. We almost have an entire city that spans the entire map, and yet I'm still using solar power, bite me. But we've just been having so much fun doing other things, I kinda didn't make it a priority, but I am now. And as I take a step back to look at our creation, I realize that the southeastern part of the map is totally full now. We still have 3 more corners to fill out, but we are quickly running out of room. Moving on and continuing with our construction projects and expansion of the city, we would also begin expanding our roadway out around Ninel's little mansion and the bank itself, taking them a bit to the north. The reason being, I have yet another construction project in mind just behind the bank. This new area and or plot of land is going to be our city's graveyard, and I think that this should be a decent enough size to house any and all colonists that we may end up losing. I hope that we don't end up losing this many anyhow, but if we do need to, we can always set up some type of crypt or something like that somewhere else in the city as well. Luckily as well, we didn't have to do all that much construction for the graveyard, as most of it will consist of the props. We just basically had to dig the graves and build the hedges, and the rest I could do on my own. Now me, personally, I've never quite been to a graveyard as nice as this one, but since we have so much money flowing into the city, it only makes sense to me that we would incorporate it with so much beauty as we do with all of our other structures and businesses, and I think that this is a fine place for our dead to lie. Also, the fact that it's basically in the backyard of Ninel and Jor's homes, I didn't want it to be some desolate little shabby place that they would have to look at, an eyesore upon the community. With the graveyard finally finished though, we would be able to discreetly and cautiously remove Blom's body from the wooden sarcophagus that we temporarily put him in last episode, and move him to a much nicer marble one in the back of the cemetery. Since he is the very first person that we've lost, I thought that it would be a good idea that we give him a grave that is a little bit different than a hole in the ground. Now, taking a look at the city once more though, you may notice on our sidewalks and our streets, and even in the front of our businesses and everywhere else, essentially, things are absolutely filthy, and I do mean filthy. This also causes all the areas with all the filth to be absolutely disgusting and absolutely abhorrent to look at, so we need a solution. Our current solution and or idea of a solution, just as many of our other city services, is going to be automated by Tier 1 androids. Allow me to introduce to you, my friends, Jacob, our Tier 1 android street sweeping robot companion. His one true and only purpose in this entire world and universe is going to be going around taking out the trash from our dumpsters and trash cans and throwing them away and, you know, sweeping up any mess that he finds. He's a cleaning bot. Sure, that is indeed a little bit depressing to think about, but luckily he does lack the emotional components to, well, have emotions at all, so he doesn't know. Now, I will take credit for a lot of the messes on the inside of our businesses, like in the gas station here that Jacob is currently cleaning up, and that's really because we don't have any proper doormats at our doors, so we're going to begin building more of those in more of our buildings and entranceways. You know, we've just been expanding so fast, I really haven't been keeping up with them. To help us combat this issue even further, we're also going to go around and begin building more and more trash cans as well as dumpsters. Now, this in a lore perspective and realistic perspective is going to allow our pod ponds to throw things away much easier instead of dirtying up the ground. But from a gameplay perspective, these trash cans actually automatically collect filth as it's being made. Now, it is of course only within a certain area, but one trash can can normally handle all the filth inside one of our smaller businesses, while a dumpster can normally handle it within large housing complexes and apartments. Now, real quick, before I forget, for the last episode or so, I've been requesting a name from our Space Tier 1 android from you guys, and we do have the name of Wally. This very whimsical and fitting name comes from our friend Luke Mindell8197, and I believe, of course, this is in reference to the movie Wall-E, the Disney movie with a space robot who is quite similar to our Wall-E. Now, I did see this suggestion from quite a few people, but I believe Luke here was the first to go about recommending it. Nevertheless, I'd like to thank you all. For a time, I just kind of kick back and watch the city in action. As you can see, with all the little white dots moving around, those are all of our pawns, just the ones that are currently living in the city and that are under our control and under our faction. Many of the other ones are from many other factions, like our guests who are constantly coming in and things like that. And as you can see, we have many people coming and going from the city here to buy our commodity items, rent a room, perhaps waste their life savings in the casino, all that fun stuff. Kicking back and taking it easy for a time would also give Lewis and Jor an ample opportunity to really buckle down and finish up our research into geothermal power generators, which we would end up finishing shortly thereafter. Once that had been finally completed though, we would be able to go about building one, and the closest geothermal vent that we had was actually right next to our storage building, right slap dab in the middle of our solar field. Not that it mattered all that much. We ended up having to deconstruct 4 of our solar power generators, and we would replace 2 of them, so really we only got rid of 2, and in exchange we got an advanced geothermal power generator, not just a normal one. We skipped that part entirely and went to the best option. And I do truly mean the best option. As you can see, a normal geothermal generator has a max power output of 3600, while the advanced has one of 5200. Now, it goes without saying that obviously that is a very big difference between the two of them. With the advanced geothermal generator as well, the max power output is the exact same as what we get out of our advanced wind turbines. The big difference there, though, is that the geothermal is constantly and very consistent, while the wind turbines depend on the fluctuations with, well, the wind. So in other words, this little bad mamma jamma, along with our other forms of power generation, should have absolutely no issue helping us keep the lights on all throughout the city all the time. While we're still on the topic of power though, a great suggestion from you guys, and something we should have done long ago once more, is adding some fire foam poppers into our battery and power generation areas. A splendid idea and a crucial piece of our infrastructure, because if these rooms were to be lit on fire, I don't think our fire truck or even an extinguisher would do all that much good, unfortunately. Speaking of infrastructure though, and something that is long overdue, I decided that we would go about smithing up plenty of hammers. That way we could pass them out to all of our builders, and this will actually make their construction projects go much faster and much more smooth. Better late than never, I suppose, but we still have many more projects in mind, so this is going to drastically help us out with that. And also, of course, because the game is becoming a little bit laggy with everything going on in the city and just how big it's all becoming, so these are going to help out a lot. Now then, those of you with a keen eye will surely notice that after a very measly amount of time of cleaning 24/7, day in and day out, our city streets are much nicer looking and of course much cleaner. Now, a lot of the credit should surely go to a lot of the new trash cans and dumpsters we've introduced across the entire town, but the vast majority of responsibility lies upon Jacob's steel alloy shoulders. Now, he is struggling a little bit with the entire city. I think we might have to build a secondary bot, but that'll be next episode. And of course, if you have a name for Jacob, please be sure to leave that in the comment section. Speaking of which, last episode we built a brand new police car, which I needed a name for, and you guys happily obliged, and we have the name of Brutal Profits. A very kick-ass and metal name, if I do say so myself, and I do. We also have a splendid name for our sushi chef bot, who really just works the register, by the name of Eddie, and we are now going to be naming him Remy. These great name suggestions are from our good friend GP Gaming 313, who, as you can see, had also suggested the name Wall-E, just as many more of you guys had as well, so thank you very much. With that being taken care of, we would also finally end up restoring the wreckage of the salvaged vehicle from our fields. As previously mentioned, I have no idea what this could have been in a past life, or if it were some type of war machine, though I believe that that may be fairly accurate, seeing how there is a mortar on top with the blueprint that was also salvaged. Regardless, we plan on using it as a lunar lander. Now, well before we test this thing out on the moon, or even in the void and vacuum of space, we are going to have Matsy, as well as Wall-E, of course, the dynamic duo, take it out on its maiden voyage right here in the atmosphere of Degum. We've loaded it up with hot sauce and smoke leaf butter to do a little bit of trading, so that's what its first mission shall be, a trade mission, which is pretty on brand for our company. Well, here goes nothing. Here's hoping it doesn't explode on its way there. We would end up having a successful flight and mission, which I was very tickled about, because if it can handle an in-atmosphere flight like this for trade missions, it should be able to easily handle the moon. Funny enough, this was also Matsy's very first flight, since he crashed his spaceship that time so long ago when we rescued him. They ended up making a bit of silver, and they also purchased for us a brand new pet. A Welsh Terrier, as it were. Be sure to let me know in the comments section a great name for this pretty little pooch, and also who I should give this dog to. Just as a reminder, Neenal already has his own dog, so I'd prefer to maybe give it to Jor or one of the others, perhaps even Matsy. Now, I do realize this episode we haven't focused all that much on the space program and the space company within the Independent Hamlets Incorporated, but I think that'll be for next episode more, as this episode I wanted to break it up a little bit and focus more on things around the city, like a homeless shelter and a soup kitchen and the other things that we've worked on. I think it gives a good balance to a lot of the priorities that our company is currently occupied with. But my friends, I must bid you farewell. I do apologize. I realize that this episode is slightly shorter than the usual 25 to 30 minutes or so, but tomorrow is American Thanksgiving, and thus I don't really have as much time this week, I'm afraid. But I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're celebrating. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I love you ever so much, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.